Talk Conversations, brought to you by Barista. Hello and welcome to another fantastic edition of Think Talk Conversations, coming to you from the beautiful Barista outlet in Nugegoda. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Think Talk Conversations speak to young, inspiring leaders where they've been in situations where they have to basically have a mindset of thinking tall, thinking out of the box, making sure that they come out with ideas and concepts to get them out of the trials before they obviously triumph. We're talking to inspirational leaders from different industries, different expertise, where they've all been in challenging situations and what have they done to come out of those challenging situations by thinking tall. Today we have another inspirational leader on the show with us. It's Louzanne Perera, who's of course the head of commercial of Food Studio in Sri Lanka. Louzanne, nice to have you.
Thank you for having me, Shaq.
How are you doing?
Good. It's been a long time.
It's been a long, long time. Of course, Louzanne and we've actually worked together in the advertising industry when I was in media, and she was, of course, in the advertising agency. Louzanne, the transformation from advertising into food and beverage, it's a completely different ecosystem altogether. How did that work?
Quite by accident, to be honest. I'd been in advertising agencies for at least a decade, and I thought at that time that I had reached the pinnacle and there's no more for me to move up. But then I also thought, okay, there's one side of marketing that I haven't got, that's basically experience in the corporate world. So at that moment I thought, okay, I'm going to leave advertising and get into corporate just to get that experience. And randomly one day when I was sitting in a corporate office and thinking, oh my God, this is so boring, because I've been used to that whole advertising agency lifestyle. I just got a call from an ex-boss who mentioned, hey, there's a chain like this who's looking to build a new team. Would you be interested in joining? So I was like, okay, I'll give it a try, because I was kind of regretting my move into corporate at that point. But then I also had kind of the need to get into hospitality, and I thought it was a good choice because most of my family is also in hospitality.
Right.
My dad was a hotelier, my uncles, my brother and cousins were in the airline industry.
So it's not new to you?
No, it's not, but
right.
it's not something that I've had experience in.
Right.
So yes, I made the move, and I actually started enjoying it because it's very similar to the agency life. There was so much more storytelling to do, so much more people you meet, so much more of exciting events and things that you attend and also cover, and different brands to handle as well, instead of just always working for one brand. So yeah, and then that's how I ended up in hotels. So the move to Food Studio as F&B was like the natural choice to make at that point, because it actually came through a friend. And I thought, yeah, why not? I'll try this side out as well. So yeah, it's basically by accident, but loving it.
But the thing with, I suppose, the hospitality industry comparative to the agencies, you're actually working for a brand, a faceless brand, yeah. Right? When you're in the agency. Hospitality industry, you're working with actual people.
Yeah.
It's very volatile.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
And how do you try and basically, maneuver that?
See, in agency life also, you basically have to work with a lot of people.
Right.
Your clients, your suppliers, all of that. Hospitality is different on the other hand, that you have to actually be hospitable also. I was always quite known not to be a people person.
Oh, is that right?
But, as time went along, it just turned out to be what I like doing, because in the sense of, even though you work for a few brands and you're working for one brand now, within that brand there's so much happening. So like, for example, in the hotels, it's not just the brand, but there's like 14 different other hotels,
right,
which have their own unique brand and their own unique presence, and it's about how do you make each one of their stories unique. How do you make each restaurant in each of those hotels unique? How do you make each event that each hotel does unique?
Right.
So it's the same way even in F&B, where I'm now, I mean, Food Studio as a brand is Food Studio, but under Food Studio alone, we have another 14 different restaurant brands.
Right.
So it's basically like you're an agency onto the company as well.
Right.
Because you always have to think and, you know, conceptualize and strategize for all these different brands, just like you would do in an agency.
So obviously, that was a significant advantage for you to come from the agency
For
life
sure.
to where you are right now.
Yeah, I think because also throughout my agency life, I was never a person who just stuck to doing one particular thing in agencies. I started off as a designer, and then a copywriter, and then I went into sports management and then event management, and finally settled in public relations, because for me that gave me a little bit of everything. There was writing, there was events, there was like designing, there was so much to do within the gamut of just being PR and communications that I settled in there. So I think that experience over the years has made me an agency by myself.
Right.
So for me, working in a brand is like I know all sides of marketing to cover now,
Right.
because I've already got all the experience in all those areas.
So obviously, must have been certain places where you had to think tall. There have been certain places there have been a lot of pushback in maybe, I suppose, the ideas that you want to sort of implement at the Food Studio. Can you share some of those moments where there you had to sort of think tall to come out of a situation?
I wouldn't say exactly at Food Studio, because at Food Studio I'm currently at a level where it's all discussion and it's all decision making together and all of that, right? But like if you look back at the agency life, we always had to work with people from different walks of life, not just your team. There were so many times when our ideas used to get shut down. It depended a lot on our clients' egos as well. Like, you know, there would be instances where I'm presenting to, if it's a man in the room making the decision, I'm presenting to him, but because he doesn't like it, that it's a woman saying these things, he would be replying to me, to the man sitting next to me.
Right, okay.
You know? And in the same way, there were women also, like who were at the table, who didn't, because of ego or because of superiority complex or whatever, didn't like a woman telling them what to do. So in those instances, it was always a case of, okay, how do I get beyond them? There were instances where I said, okay, I come back and told my bosses, I do not want to work with this client, you know, because of these reasons. But there have also been instances where, you know, you just don't give up and you just keep trying, because you kind of realize that this will always be an issue, but how do you get above it? I think in corporate life, and like when it comes to Food Studio and all, it's different, because we all sit together as a team and you discuss it. But of course, when I'm sitting there and I have outsourced it to somebody and we shut their ideas down, all of this comes back to my mind, right? I was on that side of the table at one point.
Okay.
So it makes you feel pretty bad. But I think it's not as stressful as it is like when working in an agency.
How do you maneuver something like that? For example, when you did mention the fact that, you know, you are presenting to, hypothetically, a man out there and who doesn't necessarily, you know, want to appreciate the fact that a female is presenting. How do you maneuver around that? Because those are the pushbacks that you get.
I think you just have to have that mindset to keep going. Like, you know, you can't push me down. That's kind of the mindset that you have to keep. For most girls, it's so difficult because they would get really upset and, you know, think, oh, I don't want to work with this person anymore. I mean, even if it's not a client, even workplace harassment and sexual harassment it's prevalent, right? It's all over the place. In those instances, it's about how you make up your mind to say, I'm not going to let this person push me down. I know who I am. My bosses know who I am. I am doing this because I'm specialized in this and I know my subject matter. So, okay, you don't like this, let me come back to you with something else. But it's about not giving up and not letting them think that they had the upper hand with you, and kind of just keep pushing forward.
Were you a resilient person when you were young?
Yes, I think
Were you
I
always
am.
resilient, or was
think
there
I-
a situation that made you resilient?
I wouldn't say I was always resilient. For example, I just mentioned about sexual harassment and workplace harassment. My very first job, I was asked to leave over a sexual harassment.
You were asked to leave
Yes, I was actually asked to leave.
over sexual harassment.
Yeah, about.
Did you harass?
No.
So why were you asked to
I
leave?
could have harassed later because it was a rumor that was going around, which is passed around the company.
Right.
And basically they said they don't stand for this, and without like listening or going deeper into the investigation, they just asked me to leave.
Okay.
It was my very first job.
How
and,
did that make you feel?
Oh my gosh, I thought I was the biggest failure ever because I hadn't even got my A-level results at that point. It was just my first trial job, I was just a trainee. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this what work life is going to be like? What's the point? Even in a corporate later on, I was in a similar situation, but I pushed back at that point because now I'm older and I know. So I did complain to my immediate boss that this sort of thing was happening in the highest thing. But the thing is, at our age, when we were growing up, we were never taught what sexual harassment was or what harassment was.
Right.
Whether it's workplace harassment or anything. So we always just kept on going, thinking, oh, this is the norm, this is just some people, this is how I did it. But we also couldn't give up on our jobs and we never had the option of just quitting, right? Because in our day and age, our parents would never be like, oh, okay, if you don't like it, just quit. We couldn't. We had to earn the money. We had to bring something back to the house. We had to. So you just have to keep going. But then I think girls nowadays have so much more advantage because they can actually call it out. We didn't have social media. We didn't have anywhere to go. We just had the HR department to go to. But would HR ever listen to your story over a boss's story?
Right.
Right? So those were the areas that really made me resilient. And I think because of those, for me now when I see it happening anywhere, whether it's at the workplace or in social life or anything of that sort, there's just something that I will never stand for and I will always fight back.
So what steps did you take in situations like that? Clearly, that was a pivotal moment in your life. You had to sort of sit back and think, listen, I'm not going to make this affect me. What were the steps you took in order for you to be more determined and resilient?
It's about making up your mind. It's about being strong. It's about, I think, one thing that has actually gotten me this far is the fact that yes, of course, I'm human and like things do affect me. But I also, over the years, through experiences and things that I've been through, have learned to have like a bubble around me where everything just bounces off me.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, you're going through this now. Sit down, cry about it, but just next moment, forget about it, get up and just do what you have to do. Because the more you show people that this is who you are, the more you show that you're weak and that these things affect you and it brings you down, the more they keep doing it to you. That's just a pattern. So it's about how you show that you get up and this is not affecting you, you get up and you walk, stand tall, think tall, walk tall.
In getting back to Food Studio, of course, in the fast-paced world of food and beverages, right? Was there a moment where you obviously had to think on your feet immediately, where if not, things would have just completely collapsed around you? Do you have a story that you have a recollection of that sort?
For us at Food Studio, it has been a roller coaster from the day one.
So you're thinking on your feet every single day? Okay.
No, we're pretty much a startup. We're only 5 years in the business. And from the day we opened our first food court, it's been year after year of some sort of disaster in this country.
Right.
So it's from the East bombings to COVID to the political coup to Aragalaya. And the first thing that gets affected in this country is F&B and hospitality, right? Because there is no tourism. There is no, people can't go out. The malls are closed. So when the malls are closed, our food courts are closed.
Right.
So I remember, I think COVID was one of our biggest learning points because suddenly here we are a fully dine-in operation and then we are sitting at home with nothing to do for 3 to 6 months on end but we're also not making any money. So how do we pay our staff? How do we make sure that they don't leave us when COVID is over? How do we, keep the business afloat? Because we're still a startup.
Right.
So we had to just immediately, just everyone got together over WhatsApp one day, was like, okay, we had to start delivery operations. So it was about, getting up, going, looking for parcels, getting the permissions, because our kitchen staff is mostly outstation, right?
Right.
So how do we get them back in? Where do we keep them? Do we give them accommodation? How do we, how do we sort out their transport? Okay, how do we get a delivery fleet now? I mean, there were times when my bosses and I, like, if we're going in the same direction back home, we're taking the delivery packs in our cars.
Right.
There was, like, I remember telling my design staff to come in one day, and they actually took their huge iMacs and went back home to work from home, because that's where all the data and the pictures and all of that is, and start marketing, And then, of course, the issues of working online so much, like especially when it comes to design and marketing and promotions, it's not like you can go and sit and say, hey, this would look better here, shall we do this, shall we do that? Instead, everything was on WhatsApp, and the frustrations were like, it was just out. But I mean, the delivery operation kicked off so well that, like, even after we went back into, we just continued doing it. So it's still going on, and like, it's really good. So
How did that change your mindset though? Because clearly, as food studio, now you've got outlets at One Go Office. You have just opened one at the Havelock City Mall, and then of course the Colombo City Centre, right? So it's a dining operation, right? And now you obviously had to completely shift your mindset into a delivery operation. How did that proactively help you and the business?
I think it proactively helped us in the sense that we made a lot of changes after that, after we realized that, okay, we need to make changes to make sure that the business continues. For example, post-COVID, we suddenly realized, okay, because we started off as a food court company that manages spaces. So we get the space, we equip it, and then we give it out on rent to tenants, like basically restaurateurs and franchises who want to build their business inside the malls. But post-COVID, and we were only getting like a percentage of their top line at that
Right.
point. Post-COVID, when they came back in, we found them finding it very hard to meet the commitments towards rent and all of that sort of thing. And also we realized that our business is not growing because their business is not performing either. So we are also suffering in the process. So when tenants started leaving one by one, for example, if a Sri Lankan food tenant left, we were like, oh, shall we start our own Sri Lankan restaurant? And like that, in that thinking process, we kind of now have 14 brands. So basically, pretty much all of the restaurant brands in all of the food courts are owned by us.
All right, okay.
Yeah, just about 2 or 3 really good tenants we're still keeping. But yeah, that was a turning point for us as food studio, because like I said, this last financial year probably was the first year of business continuity where we actually ran the business the whole year. But we reaped so much rewards because of this decision that we had made. So it was, in that moment, I think it was like the perfect decision to make.
So obviously, you do say that you are a startup, right? 5 years into the operation, 5 staggered years.
5 staggered years.
Because of course the chaos that sort of came in along the way. But in the chaos, you obviously have found silver lining, so to say.
Yeah.
But whilst this chaos was going on, were you ever in a position where you thought, this is not happening? Because one after the other, something's going on. And like we mentioned earlier on, the first thing that gets affected is food and beverages, and of course is hospitality. And you're in that industry that gets affected the first, right? Were you in a situation where you thought, no, I made the wrong choice, I need to get out?
So many times. Actually, it's been year on year of thinking that like over and over again. I think it's just about 2 or 3 of us who have actually lasted the 5 years, because nobody else, of course, it's a lot to take in. So it was always a constant thought of, okay, do I stay? Do I leave? Do I apply for other jobs? Do I get back into hotels? do I get back into an agency? What do I do? But it was also a lot to do with believing in the brand. I think it's because I started off with this company also almost since inception, and I knew how far this brand could go and where it's going now. But in that particular moment, oh my gosh, yes, so many times my bosses actually, there were times when they had asked me, what are you still doing here? Because, when you come from all of this experience and stuff like that, they also wonder, oh, why is she still hanging on. But I think it's something you don't even see in the new generation now. It's for example, just having that belief in a brand and what you're doing, and your love for what you're doing, and your love for the people you work for, and how you're being treated. I think those things actually trump any designation or any money or anything in the world, because just waking up in the morning and wanting to go to work is priceless.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then when you are in a job of that nature,
yeah, you think, even if you look or you get an offer, you just think, do I really want to? Like,
right.
Why would I?
What was the inner strength that kept you going, though, apart from what you just mentioned in terms of waking up in the morning and wanting to make the others feel good because you feel good at the same day? Personally, it's tough.
It is.
Personally, it's difficult because, there is no continuity.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, because that's what we were going through. But where did you find that inner strength for you to think tall and hold on?
I think inner strength is just within me. I've always been that person who also goes with my gut feeling, no matter who says what or what the world is throwing at me. So it was a lot. It was a lot at the time. It still is sometimes. But I think it's just inbuilt within me that I'm a person who just does not give up and just wants to keep going. There was a certain time last year, for example, when because of the pressure my bosses were at me, I was at them, and it was so unpleasant, and it was like, oh, I'm going to just get up and walk out of here,
Right.
But I didn't, because also at that moment I thought, okay, I will, but I'm not just going to give up and walk out. I'm going to stay and prove it to them that this is what you're going to lose if you lose me, and that's when I'm going to go.
Right.
So because I kept on going, it has come to a point where I don't want to leave and they don't want me to leave. So it's always about that pushing through and just taking that suffering, thinking that it's temporary and you're going to come out of it, but having that positive mindset. It can't always be negative.
But that's because of the resilience that built up through the years for you, right?
For sure.
Like you did mention, unfortunately, you don't necessarily see that in the current generation.
You don't.
One unfortunate incident and they're out of the door. How do you change that? How do you bring that resilience that I suppose we all grew up with to the current generation? Can you?
I really don't see it happening. It's a completely new generation of kids who are just, one little fight and they're out the door, I don't know whether it's to do with their upbringing. Like I said, when we were kids, our parents never gave us that choice.
Yeah.
I think for them, it's more of a case of, oh, if I don't work, I have my father's money to fall back on. I have something to do while I wait for another job. And they feel so entitled and they think, oh, no, I deserve this much. But they don't realize, we started from what? I started from a 4,000 rupee salary.
Right.
Right? Now they want like 150,000 plus to start off a job.
Yeah, but can you blame them with the current situation
You
around?
really can't. Actually,
you can't. Can you?
You cannot. But it's not about, for me, I have started from scratch twice in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I gave up my work and I went to work in an agency in Dubai. I didn't last at all because that whole, economy and the whole going to work, coming home, sleeping, getting up, going to work, that's not my life. And I kind of fell into sort of a depression. So when I came back, I couldn't start off at where I had left off. I had to start off from scratch again.
Right.
Then recently, in the recent past as well, I did the same thing when I went to Malaysia. And then when I came back again, I had to start from scratch. So for me, anyone telling me, oh, but now I'm a manager, I don't really want to go back to being an executive. I'm like, sometimes it could be really good. You never know, because you would learn so much more along the way. But because they're used to that level of salaries, that designation,
Authority?
Yeah, authority. They don't really think that, oh, this is a good company. Like, I could really do well here. This is a good brand that I could really work with and do something with it. So what if I have to go back to, being an executive and start from scratch again? What if their executive level is as high as their management level, because it's a better company?
Right.
Nobody thinks in that way. Everyone thinks like, oh, I'm a manager now, I want to be a director next.
Right.
But nobody wants to take that move. For me, I think I'm a testimony in starting over and like getting to where I want to be without letting that like stop me.
And you strongly believe it can be done?
It can be done. I have done it so many times.
Now, especially in the food and beverage industry, like we said earlier on, it's very volatile. It is a people industry. You're dealing with people with different expressions and different attitudes. Considering today, in almost every industry, it's very difficult to find talent.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to retain that talent because everybody thinks the grass is always green on the other side. This industry is also basically going through it as much as everybody else.
It's the worst, actually,
Really?
this industry. Especially because there's so much of opportunity, and also instead of a person in the food and beverage industry would rather work in a hotel or go abroad. And once COVID and all of that and this economic crisis and all of that happened, there were so many, like as soon as COVID ended, the hotels started opening up. So you saw all the people within our kitchens like running to the hotels. As soon as this economic crisis happened, all the hotels in the other countries started opening up. So all of the people, it's staff retention is the biggest problem we have right now. We actually have, since we started taking over all of the restaurants, we have over 350 staff now. And just managing that is the biggest task that we have in this company. The retention is, we have managed to maintain it now at like about 50%, which is good. But that
50% is good?
I mean,
Comparatively, right, okay.
to other places. But that is also because we invest so much in addition to just hiring them and giving them a salary. So we've basically become like hotels. We've started investing in accommodation. We have like staff accommodation all over the country. We give them the transport. We incentivize them if they meet their stall goals. So it's a lot of money going outside, like for example, for rent for accommodation and all of it, just to ensure that we keep the staff inside.
So that's how you and your team have obviously have got this think tall mindset
Yeah.
in ensuring the fact that
Correct.
you hold on.
And we also don't just hire people and then just let them, throw them in the deep end. We pretty much call it like, we are almost like a culinary school as well.
Right.
So that is what we market out. We don't really just say, oh, these vacancies are available. So when they come in, they go through like a rigorous training in the kitchens, and then it's down to even your chopping skills. Right. So it's a lot of training. And we have like CDPs, like head chefs, who are only 27 years old. Yeah, because they have performed so well and they have gone like to higher levels in that short period of time. So that's what we try and market that. And also, this is the only place we feel that you would get so much experience in so many different types of cuisines, right? It's not just Asian, it's not just Sri Lankan, it's just not just Pakistani, like it's everything, not just Western, not just pizza. It's like so many different types of food, because we move them from place to place,
Right.
depending on their capabilities and how we feel that they would do good in a restaurant. So yeah, I mean, we are investing a lot on our people, and the
It's not
staff card
easy,
is
is it?
only growing.
Yeah.
And the little bickering and the complaints and all of that happens, and just keeping abreast of the staff alone takes up most of our time.
I think when we obviously were in the corporate culture before, the most important thing are processes, right? Once a company implements a process, it just flows,
Yeah.
right? Because everybody falls in line with the process. And if it's not part of the company's ethos, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But you can't have processes today, can you? Because there is something that you need to realign and shift on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, yeah. And also, you can't even, you just sometimes wonder why are we training them? Because you're training them one moment and then they're not there the next moment. And then you have to repeat that training with an all new person.
Right.
So it's the same with the processes in the company, you know. Sometimes like you walk around, you don't even realize, I mean, we are a big staff company, but you don't even recognize the person because you've never seen this person before, and they don't know you either. So you have to sit and explain yourself to them. So I suppose the processes also get lost somewhere along the way like that.
Right.
So that's why we, like on a monthly basis, we make sure like we have these town hall sessions and we like drill everything into them from, it's the same repetition for people who have been there for the longest time, but it's just something that has to be done, so.
Well, Louzanne, we're almost at the end of the conversation, but one thing that you mentioned, of course, one is the fact that this is the first year that you had continuous business, which is great. Looking forward towards 2025 and beyond, what are your aspirations for personal and professional growth at Food Studio?
I think when it comes to personal growth, my aspirations are very much in line with Food Studio's vision, because I mean, I have...
Would you ever go back to agency life?
No.
No?
Not in a bad sense, but I did try going back to agency life, but I felt like I have moved past that lifestyle.
Right.
As much as it's exciting and there's so much to do, so many people to hang out with, but that whole partying and that
too tiring, is it?
Was, I'm old. Thank you for having me on this young person's show, but I'm growing old.
Right.
So I was like, you know, and I did it for so many years of my life, and I don't regret it, and I loved it, and there's nothing for me to miss by going back into it, not going back into agency life. And yeah, so with Food Studio, I think my personal these things, I feel that my aspirations are very much in line with Food Studio, because I have grown with this brand from the time it was started, and like for me, just seeing where this brand is going, and not just Food Studio, like there's like 14 different brands, there are 5 or 6 more in the pipeline. So just doing my work and seeing these brands grow, and because it's what I was built to do also, right? Grow brands. So for me, just seeing these brands grow in the eye of the consumer and our customer, and seeing the feedback we get and all of that, it's just what makes me happy.
Fantastic. Louzanne, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For coming on the show. It was an absolute pleasure to understand the story and know more of individuals who obviously have come to a certain point in their life. I mean, this is what we obviously explain, because you know, people see you as the head of commercial of Food Studio, said, oh, she's running 14 brands, must be doing really well. But there's a tough story behind all of this.
Very tough story.
14 different stories, I suppose.
Yeah, it is, and it's never ending. Yeah, it's just continuing to grow, and I think I just love where we are today, because it hasn't been an easy journey. So just seeing where we are today is fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Louzanne Perera, on the show today. Think Talk Conversations from Barista. That's what we do. We talk to inspirational young leaders who obviously had their trials before they've triumphed. Some of them still are struggling at the end of the day, but keep going on, keep thinking tall, and we've got great inspiration leaders that we'll have on the series, courtesy of Barista. We'll see you soon.